Hey, third grade. As you may know, there were revisions to our standards, and so 2016 has some changes. Third grade doesn't have any new standards, but you do have some revisions that I want you to be aware of, and we are going to go through those. So the first thing is 3OA4. How this is going to be set up is your new standard will be up here on top, and your old standard will be down here. So the revision will be in red. And you can see here that they have added, when you're determining whole numbers in multiplication or division equation relating three whole numbers, it's set a limitation with factors 0 to 10. Okay, so just be sure that your factors here are 0 to 10. So in the end, it kind of is that the result would be within 100, but it's just easier to word with factors staying 0 to 10, because when you start to move it around to more than just the result is unknown, then this sets that a little bit more clearly. 3OA6, understanding division as an unknown factor problem. Many of us were not using remainders in third grade, but it didn't explicitly say that. So here it just says where a remainder does not exist. And then you have the same example you did previously, but also it says by finding a number that makes 32 when multiplied by 8 with no remainder. So it makes a little bit clearer connection between multiplication and division, but also just lets you know that we are not expecting them to deal with remainders in third grade, because we know that math teachers need that in writing very clear, or we're gonna overthink it. Here is 3OA7. You'll see any standard that said to do anything fluently, an emphasis was added to fluently, because many people would read this as multiply and divide within 100 and not put an emphasis on the fluency part. And if they aren't fluent at a fluency standard, it is going to hold something back in the next grade. So every time you have a fluency standard, there's extra emphasis added in the actual standard, but we also need extra emphasis added in the classroom. So, however we can find time as a grade level or as a group of teachers to do that, we need to work on that, whether it be deciding that we're going to focus on a strategy, a newsletter, or multiplication and division flashcards, and any of that downtime, waiting for the bathroom or waiting in line for the cafeteria, any extra time like that we could work on a fluency standard, we need to do, because extra emphasis is added in the standard. Extra emphasis should be added when those kids are with us. And then also, again, they add that to understand this concept, but when a remainder does not exist in division. 3OA8. Just want you to know that when they solve two-step word problems, and this wording was added to a third and fourth grade standard, that refers to two operational steps. So if there's rounding involved, in fourth grade, if they were dealing with a remainder, anything like that that's an extra, that's not considered an operational step. An operational step is adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So whenever they're solving two-step word problems, it's just the only thing that's counted is the adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. So don't consider any extras that they may have to do to get to that as part of the steps. And then also, when doing these word problems, be sure that you include some whole dollar amounts, because that's written in here as well. We mentioned money in second grade and again in fourth grade, but didn't explicitly say that in third grade. So we want to be sure that we continue money. We don't just leave it off in third grade. Okay, 3NBT2. Again, we have another fluency. So add and subtract within 1,000. Be sure that we talk about include subtracting across zeros. Now, there's not any extra emphasis. They won't have any more questions on the test about subtracting across zeros. There was just some feedback, and they needed to be sure and include that in the wording. And then again, be sure that dollars are included. And not that there will be more money problems, but that it's okay to use that. And they're whole dollar amounts too, because we're not doing decimals. Here we have 3NF3. This is just one of your fraction standards, but be sure that when you're talking about fractions, I know most of us do, but make a point that students understand that when we're comparing fractions, that's only valid when our two fractions are referring to the same whole. 3G1, this is one of our geometry standards that where we categorize shapes and talk about their different attributes. And here we may have used circles before, we may have not, because it just mentioned other shapes. But circles, they wanted it specifically mentioned because if we just say others, and then there is the potential for circles to be left off. And since it's not a quadrilateral, it doesn't necessarily fall into a category with some of these others, then those attributes could go by a few years without being mentioned. So just be sure that whenever you're comparing or talking about shapes, that circles are mentioned. 3MD7, this is relating area to multiplication and addition, and just setting that limitation where your factors are between 1 and 10. So when they're finding the area of something and they're multiplying or adding or whatever strategy that you're doing, then don't get too crazy with large numbers there. And then also, let's see, 3MD7. This is another one of your area standards. And this was really just a rearranging of the words. In the feedback of the standards on this one, it starts out with recognize area as additive. And there were a ton of questions on this standard on what does that mean exactly? What does that mean? How do we teach that? But if you read the rest of the standard, the find areas of rectilinear figures by decomposing them into non-overlapping rectangles. Anyway, you read that whole rest of that. I know you can read. Then it makes sense what they're trying to get at with recognize area as additive. So the decision was just made to go ahead and put that at the beginning. Let people read that first. Then they would know what we're talking about with the recognize area as additive. So this is actually just your same standard with the sentences flip-flopped. And then 3MD8, this is the same standard, but just this one just gives you some suggestions for finding the perimeter. So modeling, drawing, designing, creating. You're definitely not limited to this, but when people ask for strategies involved with the perimeter of different polygons, then this just gives you an idea of the direction to go. So that was just in response to some of the feedback on this standard. So that is it for you for third grade. Nothing too major, and I think most of us were on track with this. We weren't using remainders. We mentioned circles. So we're in pretty good shape. Just be sure that we're staying within the factors of 10, which we're probably doing that anyway, just to be in line with some of our other standards. But anyway, that's it. If you have any questions, then you know where to find me. I hope you have a wonderful year.